is when we do the measurement of your habits of thinking, we're not creating a problem. We're revealing the one you've been dealing with for a lifetime. We don't change how life happens. We change how we show up in life. So many people today want life to be easier and less stressful. Shifting that very concept to embracing life and creating the most you can with it, living passion-driven instead of obligatory-driven, for an example, changes everything. So the other side of this isn't easier life. It's just an easier way of dealing with life.
To whatever your goal may be, losing weight, getting that promotion, having a better work-life balance, better performance as an athlete, whatever the case might be, falls into those principles of what habits should we endeavor into? What do we need to leave at the front door? What do we need to build up and pursue? Where do we start, Dave? Where do we start on this process?
Let's go back to the headwaters, because we can finally, for the first time, measure the habits as they come up out of the subconscious. And it doesn't really work, because they didn't deal with the habits of thinking they're bringing to the new process. So before we bring the process, let's address the habits of thinking, so when the process is introduced, it can actually be learned and applied. Yeah, this is the foundation.
Those 3 Ps: principles, practices, and processes. Wow, I'm excited to dive into that.
Neuroscientists have been telling us for a couple of decades, this neuroplasticity, the brain is malleable. We can actually change a habit of thinking.
This must be what the great ones if you look at anything in the athletics, the GOATs of the world, when the time's on the clock and there's chaos everywhere, and they're just so calm and poised and certain that they're going to make this shot, they're going to make this throw, they're going to make this hit, insert whatever your favorite team is, whatever sport is, and then it happens, and you're like, because in that moment, they had their habits controlled. They knew through practice and precision what I need to do, and I'm not going to get rattled.
Project, reject. That vomit tastes terrible. And well, they don't like me, or they're this, or they're that. No, we just threw up on their wall. Care enough about them to step into their world and find out about them. And then from that, create a safe enough place. There's no need for a wall. If we had our souls filled in that way, and if we brought all of our life experiences empathetically, we're not dragging them around anymore, excuses. They're actually in our heart, and we're listening, and we're creating this connection, and the walls are coming down. I can only imagine the kind of society we would live in. We'd have differences of opinion, but there would be something deeper than the opinion, something more important than the opinion. And so when we make a change internally, we're making it in the person so they can take the change home with them. That's a bonus.
Well, I love bringing home some good old home fashion, home cooking, and then be able to bring that home. So thank you. We know we're going to get some leftovers. It ain't just benefit at the job. We're going to bring it on home and have some good leftovers. The partner, the family, even the dog going to enjoy it. And we all going to eat. We all going to benefit from this.
We had steak dinner at work, and you get the leftover.
As I always like to say, we have another great one for a coaching corner. And Dave, you're one of the greats. You've helped so many people across different platforms, and we're so excited and honored to have you on. Please, Dave, tell a little bit about yourself and what gets you going in the morning.
Well, I'm 71 years old. I have spent my life healing torn bodies and torn minds. And as long as I keep doing that, I'm just totally energized by the thought. I recently got really healthy, and I was watching my metabolic age at a drop from 71 to 69. And I said to my son-in-law, my goal is to get to 65. And he says, if you get to 65, can you retire? And I thought that was a funny question. Then I thought, to what? To what? When you're doing what you love doing, why would you ever stop doing it? So that's probably the most important thing. This February, 2025, my sweetheart and I, Ramona, celebrate our 50th wedding anniversary. Best decision. We have 7 beautiful children that are all married, and we have 27 grandchildren. And we selected this home. We're on a lake in the back and the ski resort in the front, and it's built to have our children be here. So we just love having them. They're close enough. They're within, all 7 of them within an hour, most of them within 45 minutes. So there's hardly a weekend that goes by that we don't have a house full of grandkids. So it's just awesome. That's really my life. Professionally, I just love serving people. We're in an interesting time in history. People under an extreme amount of stress, and quite often for very specific reasons. And my mission is to help people enjoy their life, to find fulfillment and peace, no matter what they're doing. So that's basically me.
I think many of us are trying to be like you, Dave. We're trying that should be on the shirt. We're trying to get to your platitude, your calmness, your sense of awareness, and your values and what's most important in life. You'd mentioned, you've gotten healthier this year. What does that look like? And was there any mental challenges in pursuing that healthier lifestyle?
There was using some great nutrition, which helps. But I discovered that my battle was really between my ears. And July of 2023, I was using the mathematics, this Nobel Prize nominated math we use to create the Habit Finder assessment that measures habits of thinking. We use that in corporate America, all over the United States. I wanted to create one just for health. And Troy, I asked the question of some PhDs involved, and I said, do you think we could actually create an assessment that will measure the habits of thinking related to getting on and staying on a health journey? They were a little dubious, and I went, let's work on this. So we worked on it, spent a lot of money, and we actually identified words and phrases and mathematics that we could use to actually create that. We finished it about 4 or 5 months ago. We had 5,000 people take it. As crazy what it reveals. It reveals the thought processes that contribute to the resistance we might have, to the food noise we might have, to the thoughts that beat us up after we submit to those dozen donuts, right? It's all there now. And it was the creation of it that I went, oh my goodness, I'm dealing with that. What principle, practice, and process could I teach that would help someone overcome that? And I'm learning as I'm identifying these. So last November on the 27th, I was ready for a different journey. And I've lost over 65 pounds, which is crazy that I ever let it get there, right? Lost those 65 pounds. And Troy, it has been a joy the entire journey. I've done this before, the grit and the grind, and you hate the journey and you can't wait to get to the weight. And then you get there and you hate staying there. So you put the weight back on again. This time it's off and it's staying off. And I'm actually loving this new set of habits of health that I've created as a result. So it's a different kind of journey. Yeah. And it feels so good. My wife is 71 as well. She's like a teenager again. I just smiling. I'll let everybody read into that what they'd like. So,
Hey, there's benefits of getting your habits in order, okay?
oh, extra bonus, it's great.
When you think about, and let's dive in deeper into our habits and what you describe. It's not just in your personal reflection. If you're trying to, whatever your goal may be, losing weight, getting that promotion, having a better work-life balance, better performance as an athlete, whatever the case might be, falls into those principles of what habits should we endeavor into? What do we need to leave at the front door? What do we need to build up and pursue? Where do we start, Dave? Where do we start on this process?
That is such a great question. When we acquired Og Mandino's work, the greatest salesman in the world, 25 years ago, the question was this: Og teaches us about habits. How do we measure them? Because when you look at self-improvement, the way it's been designed, it's like, Okay, we have a personality that drives our behavior, and as a result, our actions and our results. If we don't like the results, we've been going back and trying to modify behavior. It's like no one wants to try to modify a personality. It's like that's who you are. Matter of fact, if you take a personality assessment, and there's some very powerful ones, the DISC profile, the Myers Briggs, the MMPI, the Enneagram, there's there's so many possibilities. Great assessments. My question's always been this. Okay, so we get to find out what their personality is, and maybe you've experienced this, Troy. Everybody, as a result, is labeled. I'm a INSF, or I'm a high D, or I'm a low C, or I'm a red, a green, I'm a rabbit, I'm a whatever, you know? We get labeled. It's like, oh, what did you expect? I'm a red. That's not true. If we listen to Joe Dispenza, he says that our personality is just memorized emotions. Okay, now we're going in an interesting direction. Now let's go back to habits of thinking, not doing, but habits of thinking that are coming up out of the subconscious that are pricking our emotions that we memorize to get to personality. We go, okay, personality test says I'm a high D. I'm a driver. Troy, with the work that we're doing, we measure the habits of thinking that drive that high D. Would anybody be surprised to discover that drivers are often struggling with self-esteem? And the high D is an overcompensation for low self-esteem. Ooh, that's an interesting trigger. Here's the truth. Our thought processes start developing in our brain at the brain stem. They come up through the diencephalon, then they come into the limbic brain, and they finally come out through the cortex. In development, those thoughts are bouncing off of trauma triggers and stress responses from our life experiences. And epigenetically, these are thought processes passed down through our DNA. These are from generations past. And when they finally come to the surface, the latest research, the very latest research is telling us that we're unaware of about 90% of those thought processes. Think about that. They come out, they prick our emotions, we memorize those emotions, it creates a personality, and then behavioral actions, results. We won't change results. Let's go back to the headwaters because we can finally, for the first time, measure the habits as they come up out of the subconscious. It's a Nobel Prize nominated mathematical science. It's so powerful and can measure it. And if you and I were talking and I was doing your assessment debrief, it would sound like this. You are not your thoughts. These are just thoughts. You have the gift of metacognition. You can step back and reflect on your own thinking, but you can't reflect on thinking you're unaware of. So we've now measured them so I can share with you what they are, give them language so you can finally hear them for what they are. Oh my goodness. And when you hear them, Troy, it will be like, I've been hearing that all my life. I just couldn't quite put consciousness to it. It was just right there on the surface, but not quite conscious. Oh my goodness. Yes. I've been doing that for a lifetime. Yes. Now, here's a principle and a practice and a process for shifting that habit of thinking. And we get to the true definition of self-improvement. We think a certain way. It becomes a habit, a neural pathway in the brain. Now, we become aware of that thought, and we choose to think differently. And we do that enough times, and guess what starts to happen? We create a new neural pathway, a new habit of thinking. And the brain is so beautiful because when this is established, it prunes off the bad habit. It's called synaptic pruning. And we actually have a new neural pathway. I submit to the world, that's self-improvement. Everything else is circumstance improvement. I want more money, or I want things to go easier. I want more peace. Well, if we want all of that, how about if we go to the source, the headwaters, and make a shift in the actual habit of thinking, which we can do. Neuroscientists have been telling us for a couple of decades this neuroplasticity. The brain is malleable. We can actually change a habit of thinking. Is that deep and sometimes difficult work? Oh, yeah. But until that changes, nothing really permanently changes. We can change a behavior, but this keeps slamming against it and it's not sustainable. Change the habit of thinking. It changes our emotional reaction, actually impacts our personality, our behavior, our actions, and our results. So our mission is to say to people, let's go to the headwaters. Let's measure. Let's begin shifting here. And it's like, man, this is the coolest thing ever. Or I don't really have time for that. I just want to make more money. Because we're so used to what? An easy button. Oh my goodness, there's no easy button to self-improvement. But there is a way. It's doable. And when it's done, it's permanent. Wow.
You're speaking to us today. You're speaking. And what we would say, is there one? Is there one? Come on down. The word has already been spread. We know what we need to do. I am so convinced. And what you've just rattled off so elegantly is the proof that most people need. Understand whatever you want, the growth, the success, the change starts in the mind. And most times we don't take the time to understand ourselves. Because self awareness, David, you know better than anybody, it's scary sometimes.
Okay.
To be so self aware, or even better, is understanding what is my languages? What is my body telling? What is my inner thoughts telling me? If I don't understand how to interpret that in the right way, as you said, it's going to fashion how I think, how I do, how I behave, how I move, how I operate, what shows up in your family dynamics, your work dynamics, your leadership dynamics. I mean, my goodness. And you're dealing with it at the core. Neuroplasticity is for real, legit. And we need to figure out how to harness that in the proper channels. And let's be real, Dave, as you know, there's so many who take these big words and throw some salt on it and say, here's what you need to do, but they don't give you the depth. And what I want to reassure the audience and everyone listening and watching is that we're going to get the depth, the meat on the bones. If you were already excited about what was before, we're going to layer this down even the more so you can really be digestible with it, but also know how to apply this in your own dynamics. So if I'm a new person and, I've taken the Myers-Briggs, I've done the Enneagram, I'm an ENFP or ENFJ, it depends on the year. I'm a 2 wing 3. So I'm very conscious of these things, but at the same time, I'm also aware there's so much room for improvement and growth. I don't know what that says or doesn't say about me being a high achiever. We have to understand there's so many different people with different personality types. And we're not saying one personality type dominates other people in work and other things. But I do think everyone needs to understand who they are at their core. When someone comes to you, Dave, or when you've admonished your coaches or business leaders or high achieving professionals, they're ready to go, they're eager to be, they're full of zeal. What's the first thing you tell them to slow them down and how to look at this thing the right way?
And well, you didn't get here overnight. So let's start trying to stop fixing it overnight. This is a journey. Let's fall in love with this journey. Because when we do the measurement of your habits of thinking, we're not creating a problem. We're revealing the one you've been dealing with for a lifetime. Are you ready to take a look at what's already there? You just haven't seen it. And once you can finally see it, you can finally do something about it. And by doing something about it, take the pressure off. May I give you an example? In the Coach's Corner, we're going to talk about principles and practices and processes. We're going to invite everybody to take the assessment, so you've got a copy of that. I know we'll dedicate a session to just going through the results so people can have an idea of what they actually mean. Then we're going to walk through some of these principles and practices. I'm thinking about a publicly traded company. I won't tell you what they manufacture, but their end users want the lowest price possible. Their raw materials people want the highest possible price. Their employees want to make more money, and their stockholders want profit. So, Troy, where in the heck do they make money? And the answer is incremental improvement. Now, 4 silos: manufacturing, production, engineering, and safety. I did an assessment debrief on all 4. We take those assessments and combine them into one. It's called a team DNA report. So I know where they have thought processes in common. And all 4 silos had 100% in one thought process that allowed me to say to leadership, oh my goodness, I know your biggest problem. Everybody needs to be right. Do they ever go like this? Oh man, all the time. So can I teach them a principle? So we shift change, right in the middle of the shift change. We met with all 4 silos, and I taught them a principle of how to let go of the need to be right and find good in another person's idea. Don't let go of your idea. You got a good idea. But what are the principles that govern taking down a person's wall of resistance, validating their worth, having them share, and then you share and be collaborative and not butting heads needing to be right? Shared. The next 6 months, millions of dollars in problems got solved. Young buck engineer who's creative comes out to old crotchety production guy and starts with a conversation like this. Here's the challenge we're facing. What are your ideas? Listening. Oh, what I like best about that is this and this. Oh, what would you think if we added this? And pretty soon they're in a collaboration and they're coming up with a solution. Oh my goodness, what a magical thing. We find that in most corporations we work with, people are getting attached to their ideas, needing to be right, and especially management. It's like, excuse the expression, but I pee in all 4 corners, lift up the ladder, and I have to have all wisdom and tell everybody exactly what needs to be done, versus my role is to pull the very best out of each person and give them credit for their contribution. That's a great manager, by the way. And showing them how to let go of that need to be right and finding good in another person's idea, validating that human, having them feel like what they bring to the table matters. Oh, we'll have some fun with these kinds of principles, because the number one cause for divorce, I've worked with over 400 couples as a coach. The number one cause for divorce at 55 is a husband or a wife who's sick and tired of being in a partnership with someone who needs to be right. And 55, because the kids are about gone or finishing college, that seems to be a sweet spot. Now I can finally get out of this crummy relationship. It's not just in corporate America, it's in our relationships. Look at our political situations. Talk about right, wrong, win, lose, life, death, crush people. No conversation. No conversation. Can you imagine what would be different in this nation if we could talk to each other? Would be different in a corporation if a leader pulled the best out of a person? If in a relationship we're able to find the good in the other person's idea, validate them, bring down their walls of resistance, create collaboration, can you imagine what kind of a world we would live in? It's important that we measure the habits of thinking that are contributing to those kinds of problems, and we provide principles, practices, and processes for shifting the dialogue so that we can bring a little bit more peace. So an answer to your question is those kinds of things that go, instead of going into catastrophe when I'm buying a business with every little thing that happens. Okay, what do we do to solve that? Staying in creation, not going into catastrophe. I could keep going on, but all these things help people go, okay, let's work through this. Not getting upset about it, not getting systemic, right, wrong, win, lose, life, death. That's the secret. We play life at this level, everything else works. We're not going to teach someone how to sell. We're going to teach them how to show up and have a conversation that's different and watch the sale unfold.
What screams out to me is you're saying everything else is going to align once you figure this out.
Once you figure this out, exactly. Everything
That's
else comes.
powerful.
And it's one of the reasons why sales teams have flavors of the month sales training. They do this favor of the month. Everybody gets all excited. Management gets you in there, and you tie up several days of your work, and everybody's in there going, man, stuff's piling up on my desk, and they're having trouble concentrating. And it doesn't really work because they didn't deal with the habits of thinking they're bringing to the new process. So before we bring the process, let's address the habits of thinking so when the process is introduced, it can actually be learned and applied. Yeah, this is the foundation.
Those three P's: principles, practices, and processes. Wow, I'm excited to dive into that. And we're going to get a sneak peek because obviously there's layers to this thing for those who are enticing this. We're not going to give you all the tea. You got to go through the program. You got to go through everything. But what would you say would be either the first principle or a basic principle to understand first for someone really getting into it before we move into the practice?
Well, the most important one is connection with another human being. We'll be sharing a principle called intrinsic validation. How does a conversation actually work? How often are we listening to someone tell a story and they take a breath and we can't wait to tell ours? Instead of getting into their world and staying in their world and having them feel understood, which creates peace, trust, wall comes down, cooperation floods out, conversations go deep and rich. That would be number one. But one of the ones that's most critical in today's world, we're finding more and more people with vivid visualization and effortless thinking. Two tremendous gifts. I call them a fully charged fire hose with a brass nozzle. You better be hanging on to them. A lot of people in high-level entrepreneurial people, for an example, leadership people, they come with these habits of thinking. And in today's world, they're getting used in two very destructive ways. They go into fantasy to a time when everything's going to be okay, or they go into catastrophe and start playing out worst-case scenarios. It is so destructive because when we do that in our mind, we hate our life, and as a result, we beat ourselves up. That pattern we're seeing repeated over and over and over again. A misuse of the gift of vivid visualization, a frustration. We hold life hostage. We get an expectation, we hold life hostage, and life keeps showing up differently than we want it to. Life shows up the way life is going to show up. Are we going to show up and embrace it and learn from it and move forward and stay in creation? Or are we going to keep being disappointed by the fact that it didn't show up the way we wanted it to? Well, we're living in a world where we create the expectation, we're frustrated that it's not showing up there, and something must be wrong with me. I still remember this gentleman saying to me, David, I can almost touch it, I can almost taste it. Why can't I have it? What's wrong with me? Then he said, does God not love me? I made a mistake somewhere along the way. And I said, no, you've got an enormous gift to vividly visualize. You're using it to fantasize and create expectation. Let me show you how to have a target, live in the now, get an inspired idea about creating the next millimeter, create it and celebrate it. Next idea, create it, celebrate. Learn how to live in the millimeter so you actually create your dreams. By the way, I am a dream creator. If I pulled my wife in here and said, what's your greatest fear, sweetheart? She'd say, your next dream. I mean, that's what she'd say. Because she knows if I get it, I'll create it. I won't fantasize about it. We'll break it into millimeters and start executing. When people live like that, live in the now, with an inspired idea and acting passion-driven, they actually create dreams and have a more joyful life. We've got this really mixed up right now. The easy button, the expectations, the frustration, the beat myself up. And I might say, Troy, the beat myself up is at a really deep level, questioning my very worth and worthiness, my ability, my character, the value of my contribution. People are really, really beating themselves up. And when we beat ourselves up, we're just not available to serve another person. So we start with people. But how do we get there if we can't show up there to actually be in connection? So those would be key areas. Connection with people, using our mind constructively, learning how to live present in the now. You nail those three down, and the other three areas we would be addressing, which is structure and joy in the journey and self-esteem, start to take care of themselves.
David, what comes to my mind, and it is very apparent with how you broke this down, This also helps people to connect from different cultures and identities and infrastructure. As we've seen an exploration of increase of heightened awareness, and we need to embrace more DEIBA protocols and practicalities within business, within operations and marketing and messaging and sales. How do you identify your archetypes and all the stuff that people go into? But if we don't know the reflection of ourselves and how we show up and how we make those, to your point, those connections to make sure everyone feels validated to be on equal playing fields so we can have a constructive conversation, so we can come to a resolve, so we can drive an outcome. And two things come to mind on that. One is a lot of people may think, oh, that's just too much time. That's just too much effort. That's just too much energy. But they're wasting all this time, effort, energy doing everything else. They're still not going to get to any results. If it hasn't worked in this way, what's the harm of learning this process, considering these principles and practices and processes through your full program here? And the second thing that comes to my mind is what a joy and opportunity to not only learn how I tick, but learn how and not how I show up, but also learn how I can better serve others. And ultimately, yes, get to where I want and what I want to do, but help others along the way. It's not a lose-lose here. What I'm hearing and currently experiencing, what if you all don't believe me, is a win-win scenario of how we can explore and do this thing a little bit better. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. This is a major challenge because as we have our fantasy, our expectation, beat ourselves up, we're not available. We teach people it's important that you learn to love yourself, not so you're self-centric, but so you're finally available. Now it doesn't need to be about me because I'm okay. Now I could show up with someone else. Og Mandino wrote the book, The Greatest Salesman in the World. Scroll number 2 of his 10 scrolls. I'll greet this day with love in my heart. He says, the greatest secret of success in all ventures, not some, but all ventures, is love. Muscle can split a shield and even destroy life, but only the unseen power of love, agape love, can open the heart. Until I master this art, I'm no more than a peddler in the marketplace. Imagine a world where two people sit down to have a conversation and they're both filled with agape love. They see the other person. They really see them. They're not seeing ethnicity. They're not seeing religion. They're not seeing politics. They're seeing pricelessness. They're seeing the humanity in the human being. No bias, no prejudice, just connection. And as a result, they listen to this person, not to respond, but out of curiosity. And from that curiosity, they start asking questions. Wow, do you ever feel this way? Does it ever happen that way? And all of a sudden, the other person goes, finally, someone understands where I am. Understands where I am. That creates trust, and a wall can come down. We all have them, by the way. University of Tennessee, Hartman Institute measured that on average, a person in a non-adversarial relationship holds back 40% of their energy and cooperation until they feel understood. Most relationships aren't non-adversarial, so it's a lot more than that. So our mission is to help people step into a person's world, create a safe enough place for the walls to come down, so a conversation can occur without those walls. If we just talk at somebody, we're throwing up on their wall. Project, reject. That vomit tastes terrible. And, well, they don't like me, or they're this, or they're that. No, we just threw up on their wall. Care enough about them to step into their world and find out about them. And then from that, create a safe enough place. There's no need for a wall. If we had our souls filled in that way, and if we brought all of our life experiences empathetically, we're not dragging them around anymore, excuses. They're actually in our heart, and we're listening, and we're creating this connection, and the walls are coming down. I can only imagine the kind of society we would live in. We'd have differences of opinion, but there would be something deeper than the opinion, something more important than the opinion. May I tell you a quick story? I was at dinner with my daughter and son-in-law and my sweetheart, Ramona. And it was Christmas time. We're going to do a Christmas concert down at the convention center. And it was winter, obviously December. We parked the car down below this olive garden. We're having having our dinner, and we thought, should we try to drive a little closer or should we just grab a taxi? So we said, let's grab a taxi. So we ordered this taxi. We climb into this taxi, and Troy, the taxi driver, had a mullet, piercings everywhere you could have them, tattoos everywhere, cut off Levi jacket, wallet with a big chain hooked on a belt loop, boots. I mean, she looked like she could kick the crap out of somebody. Well, I'm on my best behavior, so I said, share with me your name. And for our conversation, we'll call her Eliza. Eliza, thanks for being here. Kind of a grunt. Eliza puts her hand up on the steering wheel, and there's this tattoo on her forearm that is very elaborate. And I said, Eliza, you have to tell us about your tattoo on your arm. You could see her countenance shift. She said, I'm from West Virginia. My brother's still there. I came out here to go snowboarding, and we got these tattoos. And that way my brother's with me all the time. I thought she was going to cry. We got to the convention center by the time she finished the story, and she said, what time are you going to be done tonight? And we said, the concert's out at 10. She said, I'll be here waiting for you. I don't have a tattoo. If I buy artwork, it's on the wall. But this wasn't about me. It was about her. Can we see what's important to her and care enough about her to find that? Because when we did, her wall totally came down and we were friends. I had a new friend. If we could live, now I don't live like that all the time, Troy. I only tell you the good stories. That's all I'll ever tell anybody. But when we can do that, I try to have one of these experiences on a daily basis with somebody. Leave somebody better than you found them. If we could live like that, where people matter and we see what's important to them, even if we don't believe in it, like it, or want it, they do. Do we care enough about them to see what it is to them? I think we've lost this. And we need to get it back quickly.
Yes, I would definitely concur. And what a story with the person we've named is Eliza here, just to, again, simple story, but so much meaning, so much depth. And again, these changes that we're trying to embark on, don't be intimidated. They're simple. They're stackable, digestible things that we can make these marginal. And I love you saying, living with the millimeter. I love that. Oh, my visualization is like, oh my goodness, so good, so good. Making those millimeter improvements. It's necessary.
Here's a secret. When I got out of that cab, I felt really good. See, when someone's wall comes down, their energy and cooperation flood out to you. You're the beneficiary of that experience. And you just feel different. You just feel different. It's a way to fill our own soul. By loving and serving another, everybody benefits. It's not a draining of my cup. It's not hard to do. It's actually quite fun. When you feel that reward over and over and over again, it becomes delicious, if you will.
We've talked the intimate details of certain things. We talked about the initial principles, and now we're transitioning into the practices and then the processes. When you're getting from the practices to the processes part of this equation, what does that look like, Dave? What should we understand going into it?
Well, we're going to take a habit of thinking. Like, for an example, a really common habit of thinking right now is self-directed. When it's balanced, we act on our own moral authority, doing the next right thing for the right reason because we want to, get to, and choose to. Just think, Troy, a time when you lived in that space. That's a great place to live. When you're taking on something that ignites your passion is driving your actions, then you get into obligatory energy. Have to, need to, should, must, even fear of consequences if we don't, and the work becomes boring and mundane and burdensome and repetitive and hard. We're probably in the 85 to 90 percentile right now in our measurement of assessments. The people have drifted into the obligatory energy. You're starting every day kind of at a deficit. I have to, I need to, I should, I must. It's exhausting. Got a very specific practice that I put people through. And I do as CEOs. I'm not going to give it to everybody right now, but it's a really fun one. It's an exercise that shifts us into want to, get to, choose to. David Hawkins wrote a beautiful book, Power versus Force. Powerful words, forceful words. Have to, need to, should, and must actually drain our energy. Want to, get to, choose to light us up. Same activity, just a mental shift in how we approach it. That's the process and the practice. So we put the practice in place, and the client comes back the next week and they're like, wow, I have them partner with someone, and the word is elephant. Every time you use the word have to, need to, should, and must, ask the partner to say elephant. And I promise you there's going to be some times when you say, stop it. Because it's a systemic thought. It's right, wrong, win, lose, life, death, all, nothing. It doesn't have a funny bone. Bring your funny bone. Let them say elephant. Go, crap, there, I did it again. Okay, I want to do this. I get to do this. I choose to do this. That's a minor shift, but it has such significant impact in a person's life. That's one of 36 of them. But those are the practices. The practice of intrinsic validation, of actually how to have that conversation, how to step into someone's world, take down their walls of resistance. The practice of living present in the now in power sessions, blocks of time where we bring our mind and our body all together and we execute. And we create marvelous things in very short periods of time. The practice of using our mind constructively and using it 5 constructive ways instead of fantasy, catastrophe. 5 ways that ignite passion by giving us inspired ideas, intuitive impressions, creative solutions, those kinds of things. So those are the practices to start shifting these habits of thinking and bringing them into alignment. Because when we live our true self in our observer's chair, being our true self, it's a marvelous way to live. But too often, as Og Mandino said, we surrender our free will to these years of accumulated habits, and the past deeds of our life have already marked out a path which threatens to imprison our future. We surrender to them, and we let them run our life. I don't know about you, but when I'm letting a habit of thinking run my life, it doesn't always turn out really good. So getting in charge, sitting in the observer's chair, taking this on. I wrote a book about this called The Observer's Chair, Becoming the Best Version of You. Yeah, let's step back. Let's take charge of these habits. Got to hear them. Consciously have a practice to put into place every time they show up and start shifting them and shifting them and shifting them, getting here sooner, staying here longer in the observer's chair, and life changes entirely. So there is a principle and a practice for every habit of thinking. We measure 36 of them. They're the 36 primary habits that we're going to want to master foundationally in our life. And there's a practice for every one of them.
I don't know about you, but as I'm absorbing all of this, and maybe those who are watching us feel the same way, Dave, how do you know the receipts? How are you speaking directly to me? Who told you what is this and that? And I think as we're going through this, it's refreshing to say, oh, there's a word for that. Oh, there's a process for that. Oh, that's something I can be tested on and improve on. To your point, we carry the weight of this subconsciously or consciously
Mhm.
as we go through life. And we just think this is just how it's supposed to be. This is how it is. I'll share a quick example myself. A
Mhm.
good colleague of mine has Crohn's. Did not know they had it for 45 years. Thought how you eat and having pain while you eat is just part of the process. Never once thought to ask, hey, I'm having this issue or this challenge. Is that normal? Should I be having this? And then they're like, oh no. The rest of the world, and they're gauging not off their own reality. They're living the fantasy of looking at how everyone else is living, thinking, oh, this must be how it is, not knowing that no, that is not the case. And I need to now make these changes. Now they've made their changes and they're able to actually eat food again for the first time without having pain, without having all those additional issues and challenges that we're carrying for the entirety of their life into that point. And that same example could be magnified times 100 with us, with our mental state, our emotional state, how we show up in rooms, our relationships with our family, our significant others or partners, and work and with ourselves. And all you're telling us we need to do is take this assessment and start going through these habit changes, and we can find some resolutions and not have that pain anymore. Sign me up. Who wouldn't want to do this?
Life is still going to show up.
Right.
We're just going to show up different. I again turned to Og Mandino. He said our vitality will increase, our enthusiasm will rise. Enthusiasm etymologically is our God within. That means our gifting will rise, it will improve. We'll take on every fear we once knew at sunrise, and we'll be happier than we ever imagined possible in this world of strife and sorrow. The world does not change. We change how we show up in it, and it makes all the difference.
Oh, I need to sit with this. We need to sit with this.
It's going to be fun to take this on every week and give somebody one more thing to play with, just a little bit, a little bite-sized thing to play with. And over a number of weeks, start to see this pressure being released. And the word is freedom, a new level of freedom, not being oppressed by these habits of thinking. Whew, wow. This is a great way to live. Now, I want to emphasize life is going to continue to happen. You just look at those experiences differently. They become my teacher. I want to get there. Likely, I can't get there thinking the way I'm thinking or acting the way I'm acting. If I can, it's not a big enough dream. So life's going to show up and knock some of those rough edges off and polish me a little bit. So what do I need to learn from this? What will I want to learn from this that will help me become a better person? And as importantly, who's going to need me to be this empathetically conscious in the next 2 weeks? I just know every time I have an experience, learn from it. The next 2 weeks, if I'm looking, I'll find the person who needed me to be that sensitive. Wow. You ever feel like this? Oh, yeah. Tell me more about that. And you bless a life because you took on a challenge versus resisting it, resenting it, being angry by it. You feel the difference between those two. One is so freeing. The other one is so burdensome. And we live in a world where people just want things to be easier. And I often say, Troy, wrong planet. It's like going to Mars and saying, I want fresh tomatoes. Well, we don't grow fresh tomatoes on Mars. Well, I want fresh tomatoes. Go to a planet where they grow fresh tomatoes. Because here on Earth, we don't grow ease and less stress. I hear all the time, if I just made X dollars a month, my problems would be over. And I said, no, you just got a whole new set of problems. We don't get away from this. We don't get away from it. I hear people, I want to get off the grid. So they go buy a piece of property in Montana somewhere, build a log cabin, right? Get away from everything. Then it snows and they freeze to death. We don't get away from this. We either keep resisting it and being miserable, or we learn how to embrace it and stay in creation and create the most we can with it. We change everything.
Speaking of planets, I was thinking of Star Talk podcast, Degrassi Tyson, and I feel like you're. This is the Star podcast, but for our minds, for our habits, the same equivalency of wow. Did he just do that in 30 minutes? Did you just show us the pathways of things that we just never even put words in to explore the deeper inner grains of our mind and how that shows up in our behavior, the psychology of it, the sociology of it. Oh my goodness, even if we're going even deeper, the anthropology of understanding how all these different cultures externally impacts us internally and how we internalize that to show up externally. I am just in awe and wonder and wow. And again, these 3 Ps, these are the things that through the Habit Finder program that we're exploring, we're telling you this is how this works. If you're enjoying this, if you're just ready to go and take on this 36 evaluation, I mean, sign me up. And with that, show us what the promised land, give us a glimpse of what the promised land kind of looks like on the other side of that, going through this. What does that look like for some? What may they experience? And maybe is there any slight hesitations that they go through the process?
It's a great question. First thing that came to my mind, I hope you're starting to see why at 71 I'm still full of energy. I want to emphasize again, we don't change how life happens. We change how we show up in life. So many people today want life to be easier and less stressful. Shifting that very concept to embracing life and creating the most you can with it, living passion-driven instead of obligatory-driven, for an example, changes everything. So the other side of this isn't easier life. It's just an easier way of dealing with life. And you walk into the world, Troy, I get asked this all the time. Do you know what I'm thinking? I said, no, I can see how you're behaving, but I'm not sure what thought processes are getting us to this point. I'd love to measure them and see if I can serve you. The other side is just freedom. You're actually in control. I choose to. I get to. I want to. It's a different side of life. And when these challenges come, again, we see them as teachers. We learn from them. We use them. We see people differently. I'll give you an example. My wife and I were on a bicycle ride with our puppy dog up the hill a couple of places where we live. And apparently in that particular neighborhood, you're not supposed to have a dog off a leash. Oh, we caught Lady on a really tough morning. And you think we're going to be put in prison or something for doing this. Ramona kind of rattled her a little bit. And my comment was, she must be having a really tough morning. I wonder how the conversation went with her spouse this morning. Her kids. I wonder how her finances are doing. Because to get that upset over a really well-mannered dog being off leash, you got to be pretty systemic. Right, wrong, win, lose, black, white, all, nothing. You got to be in a strange place that creates anger. So when I see an angry person, I don't react. My statement is, you can't offend me. It's not about me. You can't offend me. It's not about me. So we get to just see the person and have empathy for where they might be that would create that kind of a behavior. And instead of reacting to it and exacerbating the problem, we get to diffuse it by just loving them. It's like I see a bombastic person, you want to just give them a hug and tell them they're okay. You're okay. You don't need to do this. It's just a different view of life. So not only are you feeling more peaceful, you actually can help create peace in other situations by not reacting in a way that takes the fire to a new level. So that's the other side of this. You walk out into the world and you just see people differently. You react to them differently. You show up in relationships differently. You're more peaceful in your own mind. And anytime you're going to go into catastrophe, which is one of the great risks in today's society, not going there today. I want to stay in creation. We start applying one of the 5 creative ways of using your mind. You start getting an inspired idea and you create something. At the end of the day, you go, I would not have had that. I wouldn't have this if I'd have gone into catastrophe. I'm so grateful I didn't. The next day, I'm going to stay in creation. I'm going to stay in creation. I keep creating things I wouldn't have if I'd have gone into catastrophe. That's the other side of this equation. I ask people all the time, do you ever worry? A new client recently say all the time. And I said, what would life be like if you didn't? He said, I'd be non-existent.
Impossible.
I'm going, wow, I don't catastrophize. It's just not in my makeup anymore. Now, I did. I had a really tough 10 years where we lost millions of dollars, a collapse of the real estate market, spent 10 years paying back $1 million in debt. It got weeded out of me. So I still go there. There's nothing good that ever comes from us, so why should I stay in creation? Well, it's taken a few years to get here, but I remember those days. My father even used to say, don't tell me worrying doesn't work. Everything I worry about never happens. Paraphrasing Mark Twain. I have permission to tell you that. To live without catastrophe, without worry, is an amazing way to live. That's on the other side of this. If you can even imagine that possibility. Once you understand it and you've applied it and you practice it and you have enough evidence to justify it, why would you ever go someplace that's dark and destructive? Why?
Sounds beautiful. It sounds like you have a way to help us obtain that other side that may seem so far, far, far away. As I've echoed in this conversation, I'm a big visualist, and one of my favorite movies of all time is The Matrix. And it sounds like you're like, hey, take this assessment, and you're going to learn how to control and understand your habits better, which is going to reflect your behaviors, which is going to reflect your outcomes. Because most of us are tied to the outcome, and we think we just have to stay in this lane, and we care about the outcome. And to your point, if you get it, then what? The habits didn't change. You're gonna have even more problems. More money, more problems. Don't tell me that's true, Dave. Don't tell me that's true. No. Limiting
100%.
belief. Limiting belief, misguided understanding of yourself, maybe knowing your self value and your worth track, and
Yeah.
understanding how those habits coincide with all that. Again, we're talking about the three P's here that Dave is going to walk us through if you join this program and understand it. It seems very clear, it seems very concise, it seems very controlled. The last thing I'd say, there was a framework I wrote in one of my books a long time ago called Clover: Clarity, Leverage, Optimization, Vision and Value, Execution and Results. And you can't get to the results if you don't have clarity. If you're not clear about who you are, what situation you're in, what opposing forces are in your way, and how you're interpreting them. And what I'm hearing, and what I hope everyone in this conversation is understanding, is that when we can really harness those habits with these three P's in mind, it's a game changer. We're going to be like, I was living in the matrix for so long, and now I can come on the other side of it. And this must be what the great ones in, if you look at anything in the athletics, the goats of the world, when the time's on the clock and there's chaos everywhere, and they're just so calm and poised and certain that they're going to make this shot, they're going to make this throw, they're going to make this hit. And so whatever your favorite team is, whatever sport is, and then it happens, and you're like, huh, because they in that moment they had their habits controlled. They knew through practice and precision what I need to do, and I'm not going to get rattled. So we thank you for giving us a glimpse, a sneak peek into the blueprint, and I hope many people are going to take this and be like, "Sign me up. I'm ready to go." Last question on this: do you think it's better to pursue this as an individual walk, or would you say in group settings it's even better?
Um, it's a great question. It's always more effective one-on-one. We do groups, and the way we do groups is a little different than most companies. I'll take a sales team, and we'll have everybody take the assessment. We'll combine it into a team DNA report where I can identify the thought processes we have in common, and we can pick the two or three areas that would create the greatest return on investment. And then we coach to those three and create those shifts. It's so targeted, laser accurate, and we know exactly where the problems are. And a company can afford to spend the money to do something like that because they're going to get a result. When you're just trying to hit and miss with the flavor of the month of whatever, it applies to some, it doesn't apply to others. We're not really in the space where we would go with a habit finder. When they know, we know. Oh, you're inside my head. Yeah, we kind of are. Let's see if we can't make it a little bit more pleasant for you to be inside your head. And so we work on those three areas, and a group starts to have an experience that improves their performance. That's the best way to approach it, a team. So, and then quite often out of that team, Troy, will have a few of them say, can I just take this a little deeper with myself? And sometimes the company will say, that's a key employee, we'll help pay for that one. But then we can do more individual coaching. If I'm working with a manager or a CEO or a CFO, it's generally one-on-one. That's much more powerful. And with an individual, business owner, entrepreneur, more powerful one-on-one. But that's a way to address larger teams with a team DNA report.
Well, we need to go find what's in our DNA and explore what's next on this process. So where can they learn more about this and sign up and get ready to go?
I love that name, Team DNA. What's really below the surface on this team? What's really going on? We find out we're actually able to help those people do things they've never been able to figure out because we're managing a personality. We're managing the way they're showing up. And generally, there's a whole lot of things going on in their habits of thinking that are causing that. And so we're trying to manage that instead of change the habits of thinking that are creating that. And they actually shift. We want to manage the very best version of the person, not manage the personality. Very big difference in the way you approach a company. Imagine if everybody's being their very best version of themselves. That'd be a fun team to manage, wouldn't it? Everybody's on their very best behavior. Wow. You mentioned the Matrix. I have to remember that scene in the Matrix where all those numbers are going through the screen. He says, "Can you see the lady in red? See the lady?" Because he could see it. That's like all these numbers. Is Cantor's transfinite calculus back behind this assessment? I get all of this. I can see all this, and you get to see how that habit of thinking is actually showing up and what it might be doing for that person. It's just wonderful to be able to go into using the matrix, the numbers on the screen, and see the lady in red.
And what amazing thing for a company to say, hey, we will help you be the best version of yourself. I don't know. That's a pretty powerful marketing to get the best talent on your team.
Yeah.
That creates the best culture, winning culture, sustainability. We're not losing our best people because they feel heard, they're understood, they're valuable, and they're being used in their best possible self with their best version in mind, optimized for the most maximum output and performance available. I don't know who wouldn't want that.
And they get to take it home. They get to take it home.
Come on.
We did a research project, a doctoral dissertation was done on Habit Finder this last year. And the question was with transformational leaders, they do okay during the day, but when they get home, they're not the same person. And I said, well, that's because it took all this energy during the course of the day to override their unhealthy habits of thinking. We can do that. It's just exhausting. They go home and the people they love the most got the worst version of them. They stopped fighting the habits and the habits took over and their family gets the habits. Their customers got the best version of themselves. And so when we help them relieve that pressure, they're actually able to take that person home. That's an extra bonus because what happens in their home, whether they're married or have children or divorced, whatever it might be, but they've all got friends and relationships. And if those go smoother, they show up the next day even more energized. Having both of those functioning is so powerful. And so when we make a change internally, we're making it in the person so they can take the change home with them. That's a bonus.
Well,
It's a real
I
big
love bringing
bonus.
home some good old home fashion home cooking, and then be able to bring that home. So thank you. That we
Great.
know we gonna get some leftovers. It ain't just benefit at the job. We're
There
gonna
you
bring it
go.
on home, have some good leftovers. The partner, the family, even the dog gonna enjoy it, and we all gonna eat. We all gonna benefit from this.
Yeah, we had steak dinner at work and you get the leftover.
Dave, we appreciate you and your time and your wisdom and your insights on covering these three P's: the principles, the practices, and the processes, and what we need to look forward to and engulfing on this journey with Habit Finder. And we thank you for it for sure.
And I might mention this, we're going to have available both the Habit Finder assessment and the Habit Finder health assessment. So if anybody has health issues and they want to start working on their health, we'll get to the real core issues that have been in the way. Oh my goodness, yes. That's why I'm eating those donuts. Because we can measure all the habits of thinking that create the resistance, create the food noise, create the beat you up after you've eaten the donuts, all of that. So that'll be an extra bonus. So it's habits in all of those areas. Your life, your health, your relationships. We'll take them all
And
on.
to learn more and go on that is habitfinder.com.
And Habit Finder Health is a slightly different one. It's assessment.habitfinderhealth.com/Dave. It's a very select assessment. So that's how you get to it. Assessment.habitfinderhealth.com/Dave. For the Habit Finder, just go to habitfinder.com and you can take it.
Well, we thank you for it. This has been great. Appreciate you, Dave.
Thank you, Troy. It's been a real pleasure. Have a great day.